Welcome everybody and Cue Up artists to the basic walkthrough of the Cue Up Arts California Keys Contact Library. I'm Michael Scott, co-designer and developer at Cue Up Arts, and I'll be guiding you through this multi-series walkthrough of the basic features of California Keys. It's not intended to be a comprehensive, in-depth review of the sounds, but more of a quick walkthrough of all the features. But links to the actual sounds will be provided later. So, let's take a look. Today we're looking at our stunning and meticulously sampled 10'2" Fazioli Grand. We used no less than 8 microphones in this instrument, giving you full and true 7.1 and 5.1 control. Each of those mics are kept totally separate for you to control here in this instrument. We recorded at 192K, 24-bit, and converted using an extremely high-end Apogee system to 44.1 to keep the sample base manageable. Instead of recording in a sterile sampling type manner, this price list piano was recorded the way an album is recorded by world-class engineer Robert Abeda, and he mic'd it for rock, jazz, concert, and film. And the best thing is, you get to control all of that. So let's take a look at the heart of the California Grand Piano, which is this microphone section here. This is what makes this piano so much more powerful than any other sample library that exists out there. All of these microphone groups are kept completely separate for you to control the volume, which is in this column right here, and the pan. And you can get a quick visual of what's happening with the microphones, where we were placed, what you're listening to, which type of microphone was used, by simply clicking on its related info button. So here we're looking at the SEX 25s, and they were approximately placed in this position here on the harp, on the top of the piano. And these SEX 25s were recorded using a True Precision 8 mic pre. So let's jump on to the second mic here. This is your mono center mic. It is the SEX 25 as well, placed in this center position. Moving on up to mic number 3. This is a Neumann U87. It's placed underneath the piano at approximately this position of the harp. So this would be your sub. We used a Nave pre on this particular U87 mic, so it's really warm and round. It gets you the whole full body of the piano as a sub. This mic group here is a matched pair of Earthworks TC25s, and those Earthworks were recorded using a Universal Audio 4710D. They were placed at this position about 8 feet high and approximately 10 feet back. So this kind of gives you an overall visual indicator of roughly where they were placed in case you need to know what's happening where these mics are. And this final group here was placed in the back of the player's position, and they are also a matched pair of TC25s placed about 8 foot high and 11 feet back. And so what I'd like to do now is show you there are another pair of microphones. If you take a look at the preset section, there are presets named Earthworks or EW, and there are also a set of presets named Peluso, which denotes that those particular presets are using a different set of microphones here. And this is a pair of matched Peluso CEMC6s, and they're placed in what engineers call the Ortif position, approximately 8 feet high off the side of the piano. And the mic pre for those is a Gracie 201, and you access these mics through the Peluso presets over here. So the Earthworks presets are swapped out, and the Peluso CEMC6s are used in their place. This is perfect for classical recording, more jazz recording, as this is the typical position for that style and methodology of recording. Okay, so now we're going to quickly take a look at the ADSR envelope, situated right here. It stands for attack, decay, sustain, and release. And what happens in this section is, this is the onset of your note, the attack portion. Moving down in time, this is the decay as the note begins to decay away. And this is the sustain setting, how much of the sustain that you wish to have in your note. This follows the decay setting. And this is your release. This is what happens after you lift up from your key. So let's have a quick listen. This is nice in case you want to create some special effects. You need to take away some of the initial attack of a note for pads or layering. The natural envelope of this Fazioli is of course included in the samples, but this gives you a little more control over that in case you should need to do that. For example, if you want to make an instrument that's a little more plucky, in case you're layering it with something. For example, you just want to tighten up a performance, make a special effect. Let's have a listen to the release. If you notice on the keyboard, I'm actually lifted up off the keys and the sustain is still happening. And that's kind of nice if you want to create pad effects. Let's take this down to the nominal position. There you have the ADSR envelope. And so now we're going to take a look at the artifacts of the Fazioli, which include key off. This is what happens after you lift the key and the hammer mechanism strikes back down onto the strings. This is a soft pedal, which gives you a much more rounded, more mellow sound. It takes away some of the initial attack and kind of softens the overall tone of the piano. This is your sustain as you step on the sustain pedal. And this is the noise of that actual pedal, the mechanism of that pedal as you're stomping on it. So let's just take a look at the soft pedal. We'll take that one first. A couple of notes here. And let's soften it up. And we'll play the same thing off. This is much more apparent on your attacks of your notes. So now let's move on over to the key off. This is what happens after you lift up off the key. Nominal position is right here. And this is one of my favorite sections of this Fazioli artifact section. In here is the sustain. We used a proprietary method to record this particular sustain, and it is beautiful. Have a listen to this. It's off, and now I'm going to step on, off, on. Let's turn this up a little bit. Off. Off and on, and I'm going to step on the sustain pedal on and off. And they are sympathetic. These notes are sympathetic exactly as they appear on a real piano. And we're going to have a little bit more in-depth on the tone and the sound of this particular layer here all across the entire keyboard because it's just amazing to hear. So now we're going to have a quick listen at the pedal noise. This is the noise that you would make as you stomp on that sustain pedal. So you pull up to the bench of the piano, you pull the bench out, you sit down and you stomp down on that pedal. On, off. So I'm going to rotate this pedal. I'm going to stomp on this thing on and off. And that's important because in a real piano, it doesn't just stop as you lift off your sustain. I'm going to play a note, let it fade away, and I'm going to turn this up just a little bit more than it may be normally so you can hear what would happen. Here we go. Here comes the sustain. Turn it up a little bit. And now I'm going to lift up and you'll hear the transition. So your sustains do not just stop cold. And off. So we're going to have a much more in-depth review of the actual sound so you can really hear what's going on across the keyboard, especially as it pertains to the sustain and some of the other artifacts as well. And that wraps up the artifact section of the Fazioli. And so what we're going to have a look at next is the velocity section. And I want to remind you that there are a mountain of multi-velocity samples in this California Grand Fazioli, from the quadruple P on up to triple F and all the different pedal configurations. But this section gives you a little bit more control over that. So let's take a look quickly at the velocity to filter. This slider needs to be used in conjunction with the cutoff, and the cutoff needs to be turned all the way down. This slider and cutoff affects all of the mics. Let's have a listen to that. What's happening is the softer you play, the more mellow and the more soft or muted the notes will be. So I'm going to turn this up as I'm playing without changing my velocity at all, if I can possibly do that. Very nice tool to have. You want to mellow things out in relationship to your extreme hardest hits, which will stay bright in their natural brightness, to your more mellow velocities, which will get considerably darker as you play. And this section here is an overall velocity curve. It's a skew. This is not a linear curve. It's a little bit more of an S curve, so there's a lot of different settings that go through the throw of this fader here. And what this will do is, you're hearing the natural velocity range of this Fazioli when it's set here, and as I go up, I'm playing the same. What it's doing here is, it's pushing up my velocity to be a little bit more heavy-handed without me having to play too hard. So if you have a weighted keyboard and you're having a little bit of trouble, this will push those notes up. And the softer notes are also brought up, but the heavy notes are not overly extreme and they won't overload. So this is a really, really nice adjustment for all sorts of velocity curves right here with one slider, and it does an awful lot of adjustment for your incoming velocity as you're playing. So have a lot of fun with this knob right here, and your different styles and different methods and different volumes that you're going to want as you're playing back your recordings and your sequences. Right now we're going to slide over here to the tone section. And there's two basic functions. There's the cutoff, which will just mute and cut your tones down to make them mellow, if this is something that you need. We're playing some high notes and maybe they're biting in a little too much. And this tone knob here is more of a presence, more of a scale. It's not exactly an EQ. So if you need this to bite through, to cut through a mix, or you need it to be a little darker, concert type sound. And there you have the tone section. Okay, so let's take a look at the effects section here at the bottom of the California Grand Fazioli. All of the effects on all the California Key series have a feature where when you rotate the knob or the effect all the way to the off position, they will shut off completely. This is your standard course that's used throughout the California Keys. Really nice for some honky-tonk type effects, or any other type of playing that you want to do, maybe some spacey stuff. And then there's a number of things happening. It's not just a volume. There's 3 or 4 things happening behind the scenes, width and spread and time in this course. And if you listen close, you'll hear it shut off completely. Same thing with the phaser. And the same there as well. There are 3 or 4 different things happening behind the scenes with this phaser. So it's not just a volume. As you begin to rotate it down, it becomes more and more useful in a setting where you want to thin it but still have some phase, or you want it to slow down slightly. And as you move it clockwise, the speed and the phase begins to ratchet up quite a bit. Listen to it shut off completely. And here is the impulse reverbs that were taken from a Lexicon 480L. Here, the way these are set up is in 3 different groups. There's the plate, short, medium, long, the room, short, medium, long, and the hall, short, medium, long. And it's not just a matter of short and then longer still. There's a little more complexity, a little bit more depth, a little bit more interesting information as you go closer towards the 3rd reverb effect. So let's listen to it. Let's step over here. I'm going to turn this up considerably louder than it might be normally. Shortest plate. You can see it's longer and it's more dense, more lush. There again. Let's move into the rooms. Very much like a room, a real room space. These are really nice, useful reverbs for this piano. Lexicon 480L, you can't beat that. Let's take a look at the delay. Again, here, your depth or your volume knob. When it's completely counterclockwise, it will shut off the effect, and any CPU cycle is dedicated to that, as I've stated before. And the depth is the amount of delay. Feedback is how much delay is fed back, how many more repeats. As you go more clockwise, the repeats continue more and more. Let's reset that. So I can take you to the next section here. We'll turn it back up a little bit. Take a look at the pan up here at the meters. What pan does is it will pan your slap or your delay taps left and right as you play them. And what time does is, as this knob is fully clockwise, the taps are really long. And as you begin to bring it down counterclockwise, they get shorter. So what damping does is it will darken the notes as they evolve over time. So when you turn this knob fully clockwise, you'll notice as they're decaying, they're becoming more and more darker. So I'm going to reset this feedback again. Set this pan to a more neutral position, shorten the time, and then let you hear it one more time quick. And let's raise up the feedback. And now let's take this damping. And here you can hear that it's decaying away, but it's still bright as it fades out. With damping up, it gets more and more dark over time. So let's take a look at the dry button. What this does is this will kill all of your effects. So if you're having CPU issues, you're having overload, you're having mud, let's turn this stuff up here and just make it crazy. This includes the section over here. So you've got things going on and they're just getting out of control. And your engineer is yelling at you, you've got issues you got to diagnose. You just hit that button and everything is turned to a neutral position. When you hit it again, it takes you back to where you were set before. So you can get to wherever you may have liked it, or maybe you want to set it. It does remember the setting. So there you have the California Grand 10'2" Fazioli.